A group of wealthy people gather in a desert paradise to enjoy themselves and have the most debauched fun that will end in murder. No, I'm not talking about the Epstein files. I'm talking about Salome. Two particular Salomes. The first one is the silent movie coming from 1922, which was an interpretation of Oscar Wilde's Salome, which Oscar Wilde never actually got to see performed. When it was finally performed in his lifetime, he was in jail for obscenity. How sad and apropos, but Ken Russell decides to give him an opportunity to see the entire play. And it pretty much mirrors what we're seeing in the 1922 version of Salome, from the hairstyles to the Art Deco sets. There's a little bit more going on here. Of course, we are all familiar with the story of Salome, the daughter of Herodias, Herod's wife, and whom he had went out of his way to marry so he could then make a beeline to his daughter. And of course, if that sounds corrupt, well, it may very well be. It certainly upset John the Baptist, and of course, Herod was afraid of John the Baptist, afraid that if he were to kill him, that it might create an uprising, since a lot of people thought that he was the Messiah. Now, there are other movies about Salome that are out there, but I think these two are my Salomes. And the reason I'm saying that is, like, I saw this one version that had Rita Hayworth and Charles Laughlin in it, and while I enjoy Charles Laughlin, and I thought he did a great job as Herod in this movie, it was kind of framed up where Salome was kind of innocent, you might say, where they tried to make it look like it was all her mother. It was all her mother politicking and all that, and Salome was innocent. But the Oscar Wilde version, which eventually found its way into this movie, the 1922 version, which was directed by Charles Bryant and starred a very famous dancer at the time, Nazimova. And it didn't do so well. The critics liked it, but by and large, it bombed. But it again had that Art Deco, some of the things that you see in the Ken Russell version. The only time, normally I would say Ken Russell improved on it, and in many ways he did improve on the Charles Bryant version. And one of the ways is because by having it in a sense where this is a movie about people coming to see a play, or rather one person coming to see a play, and that would be Oscar Wilde. And his work has already been condemned as obscene, so everybody knows that just by watching this play, they're breaking the law.
In defiance of the law, and in honor of our greatest playwright, the premiere of Salome will take place here tonight, the 5th of November, 1892. I'm touched, my dear Alfred.
And of course, what this does is it allows for some additional commentary that's not just reflective of the biblical times that the actual Herod lived, but the idea that through the years, there's always been wealthy people, political people, royalty. Maybe they can't go out and live the normal life everybody lives, so they get together for their own type of fun and debauchery. They feel that they are above the law. And of course, we're seeing this right now as more and more of the Epstein file letters keep getting released, but more of that in a bit. Silent movie, of course, begins with two guards, and one of them particularly just really admiring Salome. You get the feeling that's the only line he has in this movie or this play, which is, "Oh, how lovely the princess looks tonight." But in the silent movie, what I thought was interesting is how they had the relationship between Salome and John the Baptist, because John the Baptist is being kept imprisoned in a well, and they can kind of go up there and look at him and just make fun of him or do what have you. But Herod is nervous. He doesn't want anybody going down there to see him because he's afraid, like I said, that if John the Baptist dies, there's going to be an uprising because Jerusalem thinks that John the Baptist is the Messiah. Well, Salome's not going to take this sitting down, and she tries to bribe the guards to take her down to see John the Baptist, and eventually she does meet John the Baptist. And here's where the big difference is. In the silent movie, John the Baptist is played by a young fellow with a great physique there's no doubt Salome is lusting after John the Baptist. And at various points, she keeps saying, I want to kiss your lips, John the Baptist. I want to kiss your lips. Although in the silent movie, I should say, she doesn't call him John the Baptist. She calls him Joachim. I don't know the story behind that, but by the time it hits Ken Russell, it's John the Baptist. But when Salome and Joachim, or John the Baptist, get together and she keeps trying to tempt him, you get the feeling he's almost about to fall into that temptation. And he does fall pretty bad until finally he catches himself. And of course, that upsets Salome, and she just wants her revenge. Now, in the Ken Russell version, this John the Baptist is played by Douglas Hodge. And Douglas Hodge doesn't give in at all. He doesn't give in. He just calls her, a whore. He spits in her face, and she seems to love it. I guess Salome in the Ken Russell version is the ultimate sub. But that doesn't stop her, and then eventually she just gets upset and she just wants, to get her vengeance on John the Baptist. Now, Herodias, in both versions, both silent versions, both want John the Baptist dead, because he keeps calling them whores, and no one likes to be called a whore. But in any event, as we go to the conclusion, eventually Salome entices Herod, and Herod offers half his kingdom if she would just dance for him. And of course, Herodias doesn't want her daughter to dance for him in both versions, until we get to the point she dances. And I think both the dances in the silent movie and in the Ken Russell movie are very unique. Of course, I can show you the one in I can show you the silent movie version quite easy. The Ken Russell version, I can only show you bits and pieces. Herod has to pay up, and she says she wants the head of John the Baptist. And when she says that, in the Ken Russell version, suddenly Mom springs to attention, although she didn't. She kind of vacated the premises to hang out with two of Herod's guards in a box. I'll let you figure out what was going on here. But the moment she hears her daughter say,
"The head of John the Baptist."
Well said, my daughter!
now she's glad that her daughter danced, because she also wants the head of John the Baptist. Neither of these two are innocent. Herod, of course, tries to talk her out of it, but eventually he just gets exhausted, and Salome gets what she wants in both movies, the head of John the Baptist. However, Herod has to have something to save face with, so that the peasants don't start trying to overthrow him. So in the Oscar Wilde version, he kills Salome. And I won't tell you what happens in the Ken Russell version, except that another movie that Ken Russell's Salome's Last Dance kind of reminded me of in a weird way was Jesus Christ Superstar. Because if you saw Superstar, you remember that it begins with the bus of the actors. Those are the actors coming down the desert, and they're about to perform a passion play in the desert. So they get out of the bus, and for a brief time you see from a distance Ted Neely, who plays Jesus, sees them taking down the cross, and he's kind of looking at it in a rather concerned way, because he knows at some point in the drama he's going to be hanging from the cross. But in any event, we go through the entire drama, the entire passion play, and then at the end of it, when all the characters are taking off their costumes and all the actors are taking off their costumes and going back to the bus, we notice that there's an actor missing. Where is Ted Neely? And then the camera has a great shot of the cross while a shepherd walks across the picture. Of course, we don't see anyone hanging from the cross, but there was a movie a documentary called Superstars, that had Norman Jewison, the director of Jesus Christ Superstar, in it, and it had the whole cast, and it was revealed that was on purpose. And I think it was Ted Neely's idea that he not return, that he be vanished, that people think, well, where is he? Is he on the cross? No one's on the cross. He is risen. Maybe he really was Jesus. Maybe that's what. Anyway, I say that because this movie is the Ken Russell Salome's Last Dance is the story of actors putting on a play in its most existential sense. And at the end of it, let me just say, one of them doesn't come back. But, my laughter is paused because one thing that I don't believe was necessarily the intention of Ken Russell, and if it was, please feel free to comment if anyone has any insider information on this. But in another sense, the Ken Russell version is a story about wealthy degenerates and the secrets that they hold and the debaucheries that they do. First with Herod. He has Salome dance. He went for the mother, and now he's going for the daughter, and before the evening is out, somebody is dead. Actually, two people are dead. And then in the Ken Russell version, even though Oscar Wilde is played by Nicholas Grace, is really an amusing character, and it's hard to think of them as a secret society, but they are, because they're doing something that's in breaking of the law. They kind of feel that they're above it all. And they too get away with it. And they have their own debaucheries going on within the play, and in one case out of the play, as Oscar Wilde tries to comfort one of the cherubs or Herod's guard. I never could quite figure out who those people were who were dressed in gold. But so in a sense, it is kind of like a secret society. And in other movies, I just recently did a review of Eugenie, directed by Jesse Franco, which it was about a secret society that debauched young women. And then at the end, when one of them escapes, she runs through a graveyard where there are all kinds of crosses. And I surmise that those graveyards were the girls who were offered as a sacrifice. And now, just a few days before I'm even doing this review, I'm reading that Epstein had got gallons and gallons of sulfuric acid. Why would anyone need that much acid? Unless you're going to try to burn the bones and flesh of a victim. And in the Epstein letters, it's revealed that Trump and Epstein were talking about getting rid of certain people, and some of the kids were threatened with their lives, and maybe some of their lives were actually taken. And so you have all these artists and filmmakers and writers and novelists over the years who have written books and movies about secret societies, and of course Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, another example. But when you hear this, the impulse is to say they were trying to warn us. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think the idea of wealthy people getting together to act like they're above the law, and in some cases commit crimes and then bury their victims, has been a part of literature for so long. The Marquis de Sade, which was then interpreted as a movie by Pasolini, in The 101 Days of Sodom, except he had Nazis doing the bidding. No different than some of the things we're seeing that are happening over there at Epstein. And I mean, good grief, when I'm looking at some of those letters, and after seeing Salome and some of these other movies, I'm just thinking, number one, you do art long enough, your art winds up being prophetic. Unintentionally, but still prophetic, because a certain part of your brain is picking up on something that maybe your conscious mind wants to deny, but art, like your dreams, won't let you deny them. And so I think in some ways it's not that they're trying to warn us this is going on, But they're saying, isn't it obvious this is going on? And then when the truth comes out, we all act shocked. But there's no reason we need to be shocked. As another person who was once attributed as the Messiah once said, you had the prophets, and you didn't listen to them. Let's listen to more of our artistic prophets as we try to put ourselves together after this train wreck of whatever is happening in the world finally happens. Thank you for watching Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater, and hey, if you like this program and want to see more, then by all means, like and subscribe and become a member. And you can watch various movies that I have put for members only, like my seminar about dream interpretation, which is as a course, and my feature-length movie, Bible Men, which to deal with people planning certain things in secret. But I'll talk about that on another program. Thanks for watching.